Hi guys, it's Mrs. Cruz. Today we're going to read a book called Encounter. And before that, we want to talk a little bit about context clues. That's going to be our goal throughout the reading. You're going to have to find some, understand what they mean. We will talk about specific words and then have you help you to achieve finding out the definitions of it. And also, we're going to talk about something called VCE words. They are words that end in a silent E. So you're also going to be looking around, making sure that you find those words that end in a silent E. Very important, make sure you have your journal ready to go. Make sure that you have a sharpened pencil. Make sure you date it and you title the paper with the name of the book, Encounter, okay? All right, let's get started.
Hey guys, we're going to talk a little bit about context clues today. You know what context clues are, so we're kind of reviewing. Context clues kind of help you give you an idea of what the unfamiliar word is, and that's kind of where we come up with this little acronym here. I kind of can stand for inference. That's one way you can find context clues, meanings of words you're unfamiliar with. Inference, the meaning's not given, you have to use text clues. You just have to kind of figure out based on your knowledge and what you see there. Here's an example, and these are all using the word arrogant. Don't want to work with Ricardo unless you want to hear him talk about himself. He's so arrogant. Doesn't really tell you much, but you can kind of figure out. He talks about himself all the time. People may not want to work with him very much. That tells us what that kind of means, that he's kind of stuck up, he's kind of proud. You might use a definition to figure out context clues. Sometimes in writing, they'll say Ricardo is so arrogant, and then right following after that is the definition. He thinks he's more important than everyone else. You might use an example, letter E. So sometimes the writer will give you an example right after the word. Ricardo is so arrogant. Here's the example. He is always bragging about how great he is at sports. You might find an antonym, the opposite meaning of a word. Ricardo is so arrogant. Here's the antonym. He needs to learn to be humble like his little brother Jose. Okay, you might have to look that word up too. That's okay. Opposite of arrogant is humble. Humble means you're really soft-spoken, you're not really braggy. Or you might use a synonym, another way to find meaning for a word you don't know. A synonym is the same or similar meaning. Ricardo is so arrogant, proud, self-centered, and overbearing, all words that mean the same thing as arrogant. So these ideas, inference, definition, example, antonym, and synonym, are all ways that we can find meanings of words we're not sure about. You're going to use these in our read aloud today.
Today's book is called Encounter. It is written by Jane Yolen and illustrated by David Shannon. The moon was well overhead, and our great fire had burned low. A loud clap of thunder woke me from my dream. All dreams are not true dreams, my mother says, but in my dream that night, 3 great winged birds with voices like thunder rode wild waves in our bay. They were not like any birds I had ever seen, for sharp, white teeth filled their mouths. Take a look at this picture. Look at the winged birds, the 3 winged birds that were in the narrator's dream. Narrator is the person telling the story. That's their point of view. Think about the dreams that he had and look at the images that we see in the book. Mental images. Let's start from the very beginning. We want to start picturing like a movie in our minds that goes along with the story, okay? I left my hammock and walked to the beach. There were my dream birds again, only now they were real. 3 great sailed canoes floating in the bay. I stared at them all through the night. When the sun rose, each great canoe gave birth to many little ones that swam awkwardly to our shore. I ran then and found our chief still sleeping in his hammock. "Do not welcome them," I begged him. "My dream is a warning." But it is our custom to welcome strangers, to give them the tobacco leaf, to feast them with the pepper pot, and to trade gifts. "You are but a child," our chief said to me. "All children have bad dreams." Okay, friends, so on this page, we find our first word that we're going to practice using context clues. Remember, context clues, you're going to use words or group of words to determine the meaning. When you find a word that you're not sure what it means, you're going to stop, reread the sentence, and then make a really good guess about the meaning. The first word on this page that we're going to talk about is custom. So what you're going to do in your journal is you're going to write the word custom, C-U-S-T-O-M, and in a complete sentence, tell us what you think the meaning is, okay? Remember, before our book started, we had the ideas mini lesson, and that's going to help you define the word, okay? So if you have to stop the video and write down your thoughts, go ahead and do that, okay? Remember the dream that was mentioned at the beginning of the story? He said 3 winged birds, but now we see 3 big boats. Remember, good readers ask themselves questions. A question could be, are they the same? Was he thinking that the birds in his dreams are the boats that he saw coming to shore? That could be a good question. The baby canoes spat out many strange creatures, men, but not men. We did not know them as human beings, for they hid their bodies in colors like parrots. Their feet were hidden also. And many of them had hair growing like bushes on their chins. 3 of them knelt before their chief and pushed sticks into the sand. Then I was even more afraid. Our young men left the shelter of the trees. I, who was not yet a man, followed, crying, "Do not welcome them, do not call them friends." No one listened to me, for I was but a child. Our chief said, "We must see if they are true men." So I took one by the hand and pinched it. The hand felt like flesh and blood, but the skin was moon to my son. The stranger made a funny noise with his mouth, not like talking, but like the barking of a yellow dog. Okay, here earlier we talked about VCE words. So you have several on this page. Take a moment, stop the video, look at the page on the words on the page, and see if you can find any VCE words. Try to find maybe like 3 or 4 of them. Take a look closely and see what you can find, okay? On this illustration, boys and girls, remember we want to also create mental images. This is a fantastic illustration because it goes right with the text. I pinched one of the men and he was moon to my son. Look at how he compares maybe colors, or maybe is the sun hot and is the moon cool because it comes out at night? Those are some maybe questions also you could be asking yourselves as you look at the illustrations and compare it to the text. Our chief said to us, "See how pale they are? No one can be that color who comes from the earth. Surely they come from the sky." Then he leaped before them and put his hands up, pointing to the sky to show he understood how far they had flown. "Perhaps they have tails," said my older brother. "Perhaps they have no feet." Our young men smiled, but behind their hands so the guests would not feel bad. Then they turned around to show that they had no tails. On this page, we have our next word that we want to use our context clues with. The word is pale. Take a moment, Write it in your journal, P-A-L-E. What do you think that word means? Earlier I said you want to stop and reread the sentence, and you want to use the words or the words around it to help you find the meaning, and then really make a good guess. In a complete sentence in your journal, write down what you think the word pale means. Don't forget to create mental images in your mind as you hear the story. Here's a great example of maybe the Native Americans thinking that these strange creatures came from the sky because they couldn't believe the difference in color of their skin. Our chief gave the strangers balls of cotton thread to bind them to us in friendship. He gave them spears that they might fish and not starve. He gave them gum rubber balls for sport. He gave them parrots, too, which made our young men laugh behind their hands all over again, knowing it was our chief's little joke that the strangers looked like parrots. But the strangers behaved almost like human beings, for they laughed too and gave in return tiny smooth balls, the color of sand and sea and sun strung upon a thread. And they gave hollow shells with tongues that sang chunga chunga. And they gave woven things that fit upon a man's head and could cover a boy's ears. For a while, I forgot my dream. For a while, I was not afraid. Don't forget your VCE words. There are plenty on this page. Take a moment, stop the video, look at the words on the page, and jot some down on your notebook. So we built a great feasting fire and readied the pepper pot and yams and cassava bread and fresh fish. For though the strangers were not quite human beings, we would still treat them as such. Our chief rolled tobacco leaves and showed them how to smoke, but they coughed and snorted and clearly did not know about these simple things. Think about why they didn't know those things. Think about where the strangers came. Think about what things the Native Americans did in their land. And also, there's no way that they can communicate with regular words because they spoke different languages. Again, create those mental images in your mind and how you think that happens or what's happening. Ask yourselves questions. That's what good readers do. And don't forget your VCE words as you hear the story. Write them down in your journal, okay? Then I leaned forward and stared into their chief's eyes. They were blue and gray like the shifting sea. Suddenly, I remembered my dream and stared at each of the strangers in turn. Even those with dark human eyes looked away, like dogs before they are driven from the fire. So I drew back from the feast, which is not what one should do, and I watched how the sky strangers touched our golden nose rings and our golden armbands, but not the flesh of our faces or the arms. I watched their chief smile. It was the serpent smile, no lips and all teeth. I jumped up, crying, "Do not welcome them!" But the welcome had already been given. Think about how he describes the stranger's smiles. A serpent smile, no lips, all teeth. And why do you think they would only touch the golden nose rings and golden armbands, but not shake hands or not hug each other? Think about that.